Guys, it's Brian with Tropicanic Gardens back there. All of those random cups on the ground. Each one of those cups, I'm going to put a sweet corn seed in. This is the Butter Gold. It's a hybrid corn variety. I've got each one of those cups. That's where I'm going to be planting a single seed. I'm priming those seeds in the house. I like to mark where I'm going to put the seeds down because I'm going to fertilize in each hole. And that's the point of this video today. How much and how do you fertilize corn that you're going to be planting for garden purposes? This has nothing to do with commercial agriculture. This is straight up here at a home garden. Before I get deep into the video, I've got a 3-foot by 4-foot plot with 48 spots for me to place the seed into the ground. Corn, for many of you who don't know, corn is a grass. And the Turf Mechanic channel, the main Turf Mechanic channel, is all about growing grass, typically in a lawn setting. Corn is really no different than a summer annual grass. One of the biggest differences, outside of the fact that we can eat the corn that comes off of the cobs, is that it's a very short-lived grass. So we truly want to plant this at the best time of the year, give it the exact correct fertilizer, give it the right amount of water, and let it grow through the most optimal part of the year to get really good crop production. By midsummer, I would love to have an oversupply of corn cobs full of food. And to isolate only the fertilizer, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Now, when I plant garden crops, I like to know exactly what fertilizer needs I'm going to need for the plants that I'm putting down. Here, I've got a couple cups falling over in the wind, but here I've got 48 spots for 48 seeds. Each seed, I want to put a scoop of fertilizer into the hole. So really, the plan here is where I intend on growing a seed to dig a little bit of a hole, not with a spoon, but, with a garden shovel. Dig a hole, but I want to use this size of a spoon to spoon in the exact fertilization needs for that plant. So long as I'm not using synthetic fertilizers, only organic and natural sources, I can put stuff in there. I don't have to worry about burning anything, and it's going to be released slowly over time because corn grows in approximately 2 to 2.5 to 3 months, depending on the variety. The variety I'm sowing is a very fast to grow variety. I expect this to only come in slightly over 2 months. So I want to scoop out enough, put my fertilizer in for the first month, and then be able to come back 1 month later and add the second dose of fertilizer to polish off the entire process. So weirdly enough, this is literally how I'm dosing up my fertilizer. I need to be able to get enough nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and anything else in one single scoop into this growing hole. Now, typically while I'm fertilizing turf grass varieties, I shoot for an 8-to-5 NPK ratio. That's because the vast majority of grasses do their best with that ratio. Here you see my artichoke plants. These are nitrogen hogs. They take a lot of nitrogen to grow, a lot of water. The same thing is going to happen for corn. To grow really good corn, you want to stick to that ratio, but you really don't want to skimp on the nitrogen. If you're going to skimp on anything, adding phosphorus and potassium into the lawn is far less important. So just imagine if there's actually a hole here. Corn needs to go approximately 2 inches. Corn seeds need to go approximately 2 inches into the soil. So once I pull that back, I need to be able to spoon just enough in to give half of my fertilization needs to that corn in that first month. And then I can cover it back up and let it germinate. Let's go inside to my kitchen and I'm going to show you the products that I'm using and the proportions that I'm using to get the exact perfect mix, or really stinking close. All right, don't tell my wife. I'm doing this in the kitchen. I don't know, my wife might watch this. I'll pay the price later. But typically speaking, on a commercial agricultural level, corn is sowed and grown with approximately 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre. If you run the math, that ends up being roughly 4.5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Again, in that commercial setting, you end up sowing the seed a little bit thinner than we can do in home gardens. So what I'm going to suggest doing, or at least what I'm going to do on my plot, is round that up, not even round it. I'm going to double that rate. I'm going to shoot for approximately 9 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet for my own home garden. However, I'm only doing 12 square feet. So I have to run the math to bring the numbers down to the appropriate level for my small space. Now I'm going to do 48 plants, 48 seeding holes. That's going to mean I'm going to need a lot less nitrogen than if I was growing a farm. I like to use natural organic products, like I said before, And to be able to use a scooper, like a spoon, like a tablespoon size scooper, I need volume. So what I'm going to be using is Alfalfa Meal. Alfalfa Meal's got the same amount of nitrogen as it does potassium, but it's got a lot of volume because it doesn't have a lot of nitrogen or potassium per pound. It's approximately 2.5% of its volume by weight is nitrogen and potassium. I'm going to call that a carrier. It's something that I can carry in my spoon very easily. I can scoop it and measure it very easily. I'm going to mix in a little bit of extra feather meal. Feather meal is a high nitrogen natural source, plant-based source of nitrogen, but you don't need nearly as much of it because it's approximately 12% nitrogen by volume or by pound. Let me illustrate what I'm talking about here. This right here, I took 48 scoops of about that size out of my Alfalfa Meal product. Here, I use a different spoon. Alfalfa Meal, 2.5, 0.5, 2.5. 48 scoops. So essentially I'm going to do that for every single planting hole, but it's not enough nitrogen. So I'm going to supplement in, this is 13 ounces, by the way, by scale. That's 13 ounces. So that's literally how much it takes, 13 ounces. But to get the nitrogen content up, I'm putting 4 ounces of straight feather meal into it. And then for the phosphorus, I'm putting in 2 ounces of Seabird Guano. Most people use bone meal. Seabird Guano, for me, it breaks down a little bit easier and faster. And quite honestly, I have it on hand. Bone meal, I don't have on hand. So I'm using that, 11%. It only takes 2 ounces of this to mix into my Alfalfa Meal, 4 ounces of feather meal, and 13 ounces of Alfalfa Meal. This combined, once I mix it together, gives me the exact half rate for a 12 square foot block of corn sown at 4 plants per square foot. So depending on the size of your garden bed, if you're seeding corn into a 12 square foot block with 48 plants, just like I am, this is the exact ratio that you're going to use. As a grass enthusiast and gardener, I believe it's very important to use natural and organic sources of fertilizer as opposed to synthetics or urea. But there's another reason why I'm using Alfalfa Meal as the bulk content provider of the nutrients, because Alfalfa Meal has something naturally occurring in it called tricontinol. Tricontinol is a naturally occurring compound that is found in Alfalfa Meal that stimulates plant growth into the root development zone. Corn is not known to be a deep rooter, but because it's not a deep rooter, if I can push any additional root development, then that's going to give me a significant advantage over anyone else trying to grow corn with a shallow rooted stalk of corn. Not only am I getting the potassium and some nitrogen from the Alfalfa Meal, but I'm getting the extra root development potential of the tricontinol that is found in this product. A small amount of Seabird Guano goes a long way. It gives us the phosphorus that we need for the root development, and the feather meal tops us off in the extra nitrogen that the plant needs because it is a grass. It needs to put on gigantic, big, healthy leaf systems for that grass plant, that corn plant to grow straight up to the sky. Lastly, to help with nutrient uptake and nutrient availability, water moisture availability, I'm going to add in a little bit of Miccorizae into this mix. I'm going to stir the whole thing up, and then I'm going to be able to scoop single scoops out of this once it's all properly mixed into each planting hole. And so long as I do that at time of planting, and then approximately 4 weeks later, I do this entire process again with the exact same products, that's going to give me roughly 9 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot equivalent into my garden bed, along with roughly 2.5 pounds of phosphorus per 1,000 square foot equivalent, and slightly over 4 pounds of potassium per 1,000 square foot equivalent. So it gets us extremely close to the 8-to-5 ratio by simply doing this. 1 tablespoon per planting hole. That's what I'm doing.